Hi. It's not your fault or mine, but together we can do something about it. Stay tuned.
Voices of humanity, we need to hear your voices. We need to hear your voices.
Hi. Welcome to the Voices of Humanity. I am your host, Sandra McKechnie, the Voices of Humanity, coming to you from the prconnectionsradio.com, the voice of new media. Thank you for joining us. This show is fueled by double consciousness. Double consciousness is a concept put together by W.E.B. Du Bois, social reformer. He was the calendar boy, shall we say, of the NAACP for well over 20 years, and that is the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People. And a quick breakdown of double consciousness is it means two streams of thought, two social identities, has everything to do with the descendants of the sub-Saharan trade, transatlantic slave trade, apartheid, colonization, imperialism. Fantastic topic, has a lot to do with the people through the time warp, I say, 21st century, 20, 19, 18, 17, and what happened back there, and why is that important to close the disconnect? Why is that so important as we come back through that time warp, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21? Here we are, and how do we look, and why do we show up how we show up? And I have a special guest on today, actually someone I've known for a lot of years, and we bring everyday people. This is the Voices of Humanity. It's a video podcast, which means we're also going to see the faces of humanity. We have all kinds of people coming in here, and we're just grateful to connect with you, the audience. All right. So I just want you, I'm going to bring on Roxanne right now. And I really love doing this show simply because we just try to keep it real. Roxanne, girl, come on down.
Hello.
Hey, how are you? Yeah, we got a
I'm good,
little
thanks.
fanny thing still going on there, but that's okay. We will
Yeah,
make
thanks for having me.
do. We will make do. How are you? I'm going to read a little bit about your bio first, just a little bit, and then we'll go
Okay,
on and
thank
we'll
you.
just get into it. Roxanne Joseph is originally from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. Roxanne spends her time as an audio-visual, literary, and performing artist, lyricist, educator, arts administrator, anti-racism activist, and mother. Roxanne is alumni of Toronto Film School, digital video editing program, Goddard College's Master of Fine Arts in Interdisciplinary Arts program, Plainfield, BT, and Obsidian Theatre Company, Playwrights Unit, Toronto. All right, so that's a little bit, and we're going to get into like all the rest of it. So one of the big things we say at the beginning when I open Roxanne is it's not your fault, and I keep repeating it, but together we can do something about it. And that's the thing, right? We've got a lot going on, but so Roxanne, my dear, we've known each other a lot of years. Okay, so we met, I think, I don't know, we met at the subway. I
We
think,
met in the bus, yes.
right?
Yeah, I think I was going to work and I think you were already on the bus, and we used to see each other, and we started talking about hair,
I
and
was admiring your locks, wasn't it?
something like that, yeah.
Something
I
went
think
down
we
about
might
the
have started,
locks.
yeah, it had something to do with hair, that's how it started.
I think I was admiring your locks, or I had just started, or something, and you've gone through a few of those.
Exactly, yeah,
I just
several
kept mine.
incarnation of the
I just
locks.
kept grooming mine and keeping it. But
Yeah.
we started a connection, and I think one of the big things and why I wanted her on the show, because I think women and people, everybody could relate to her and what she's been through in her life. And the interesting thing about her that I noticed, I thought, gee, she's similar to me in that she kind of presents white. Back then, I didn't have any words. I just, she was like this kind of black rock girl. Am I lying? Come on, Mike. Am I lying, Roxanne?
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
It's funny because when you say that, presenting white, I had moved to New York City in in the early '90s, and I get especially African Americans asking me, "You sound like a white girl." And me not, I have no idea, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm, born and raised in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. I just sound like myself. Like I don't attribute any, ethnicity. To me, it's a geographic thing. I'm from Ottawa. I sound like an Ottawa-tonian. I probably sound less like an Ottawa-tonian now because I've moved around.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't really. So if you were thinking that, I probably would have had no idea.
I know. Well, people say it about me all the time, even to this day. Only I've got some connectivity now to the time warp, to my heritage. But really, what that looks like is how we have just been assimilated upon trauma. How people, like we were taken, I always say we were taken from the continent, I'm meaning Africa. And then we've got family that stayed home, that, went through colonization, all of that stuff,
Mhm.
and certainly have got their share of challenges, but we kind of showed up a certain way. So I would love to get into some of this. When we were talking about you at work, we were talking about we lived in the same building and how that looked.
In the artist co-op, yes.
Yeah, and the artist co-op, and you went through a few couple of things there, and raising this beautiful child that you've got, who's a woman now, doing amazing things. What did that look like for you as a Black woman in that co-op with a
Oh wow.
single
Well,
mother?
first, like getting in, I had to apply. There's a membership committee, so there's a process to get in. But when I first began the process, actually, I found out about the co-op from you, so
Yeah.
that's how I found out. But when I applied, unfortunately, my daughter and I were in a shelter for domestic violence survivors, so we were there. So because of that, there's like an emergency. There's an emergency list. And so, because I was also an artist, so I managed to make it onto that list as well. So,
Mm.
yeah, so I was able to get in via that way.
What kind of stereotype was around at that time? That's what, early, was
That
it
was
2090?
mid 90s, so that would have
Yeah.
been like 98 when we
Wow.
got in there, 1998, and my daughter was 16 months.
Oh my
She was
gosh.
very little.
I
She
can
was
see I
still
can see
in
one of her pictures in my mind right now.
a
So
yeah.
what kind of challenges? What did it look like being a single mother, Black? And
Uh, Interesting. I never really, put myself in that, in that sort of under that umbrella, like, okay, people are looking at me this way. But I knew, I obviously was very aware and conscious that they probably were. First of all, I don't look my chronological age because
you still don't, honey.
I'm 55 now. So at the
Still
time, I
don't.
was like early 30s. So
Yeah,
if I was early 30s, I probably look like maybe late teens, early 20s at that time.
definitely.
So
Definitely.
people, and there's a lot of people who have this like, superior kind of attitude. I could think of a few, several of the neighbors who had this kind of attitude. And I was getting it. Like, people would take my ideas because, we had these, we used to have these, what do you call it, like these gatherings and it's, oh, what do ideas to have for the co-op and stuff. And, I, being the person I am, would, voluntarily say, oh, we should do this, we do that. And then later, and I mean, people would be like, "Oh, we should do this or that," and like, I, I said that, like, that was my idea, and I wouldn't get any kind of like, acknowledgement. And so I started to see things. I called certain people information hoarders. Like they would, hoard information. Like they had valuable information and knew about resources and stuff, but they wouldn't say anything. They wouldn't offer. They wouldn't be generous with
Mm,
their. And
mm,
I noticed other things about people. Like they would. It is almost like maybe it was the way I was raised. I was raised with my grandparents, so I didn't have this sort of thing where you do something and expect something back. Like I believe people did things out of the goodness of their heart. Like I didn't know, oh, you do something and it was like this transactional kind of
mhm,
behavior.
mhm,
I
mhm.
didn't know what that was until I moved there and met certain people.
Mm.
So that was an interesting, yeah, kind of
Okay.
disappointing, but yeah, it was a learning experience. Yeah.
See, I love this that you show up like when people are listening today, it's like we show up how we are. So I used to just show up. This is how I was. I didn't even understand about that time warp and what happened back there, and that a lot of things came with me. And there is also underlying reasons why we show up a certain way, even though it's a part of us, it's
Mm-hmm.
entrenched, right? So
Mm-hmm.
here we are in the 21st century, and people were saying to me, oh, you present white, look at you,
Mm-hmm.
you're just white, you're like a white girl, and things like this. And I used to get offended.
Mm-hmm.
But then once I made a connection, one day I made this connection, and things start to happen in your life. People will say things like, I would go out to sing at an event, and a woman looked at me, literally. I told the story to the audience a few times, right? That, and they just looked at me and went, I had my locks and everything, and I'm ready to sing at this huge thing that was important for people, women to get into. It was a women's group. And the woman said, no, I don't think you're booked this week. I don't think so. And I went, no, I am. And my friend that got me in was right next to me because we used to sing together. And she said, no, I'm singing this month. She's singing next month. But that woman, she said, no, I have to check that. And then when I sat down, my friend who was with me came and sat down, and she said, oh my gosh, I think they're prejudiced. I never sung there. They never called me. That they heard my voice on the phone, but they didn't,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't see me.
Right. Yeah.
So when
I
I think
remember
of
this story.
yeah,
Yeah.
when I think
Mm-hmm.
of the things that trigger my blackness, which is in a good way, when I realized, and just over and over, story after story, I recognized that, oh my gosh, one day it was like, I'm really black,
Yeah, there's no hiding that. See,
And
that's the thing. This is not to interrupt you, but
no, go ahead,
the
honey.
thing is we can't, there's no like, oh, it's like sexuality. Like we can hide that fact. Like people in general could, you don't have to disclose your sexuality.
Hmm. Hmm.
But when it comes to ethnicity and genotype, biological race, if you want to call it race, I believe
Hmm.
there's only one, the human race. But
Well, yeah, yeah,
ethnicity types, right? So
yeah,
we of if you want to say Afro descendants, we
yes,
can't hide that. There's no hiding that.
for sure,
You know what I'm
definitely,
saying?
definitely.
So, I mean, culture, ethnicity, sexuality, they're different lanes. So when people try to say, oh, like civil rights is the, sexuality and stuff, like I kind of don't agree with that, but that's
Hmm.
another topic for
That is
probably for
definitely another
that's
topic, girl.
another show.
But I hear you. I totally hear you. And then
Yeah,
there's so many intersections that civil rights and all that is gone somewhere. I don't know where it's gone, but
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
fascinating at when we try to, we come here and we try to get along. We try to do our best to assimilate. Some people don't like that word, but in essence, that's what we were taught to do by slave master back when. And when we're here now, what that looks like when we go at our workplaces. You've had some interesting things happen at your workplace. And when people are actually going through, so I do these trainings, as you know, double consciousness, and people show up. And the last one we did, there's some comments where we recognize that people, it was good because we've got the people that are saying, this is amazing. Oh my goodness, it's changing my life. And the people that are giving some constructive things, maybe it was too long, different comments. But then you have comments that are, people are like, whoa, they didn't just say that, did they? Where people are, there's this resistance. Like clearly there is resistance and entrenched bias. The R word comes to mind, and people are like, oh my gosh, she shouldn't say that. Why would And there's this opposition to what's happening. And a lady came on a call with me and she said, how could you say that? You talked about anti-bias, anti-racism. We don't all have anti-bias. I have no biases. And I thought, as we live and breathe, you have no bias.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
You have no discrimination. But here we are in the 21st century. So at your workplace, have you ever found anything like that going on? Like, is there any way, how did you show up? Was there any kind of underlying biases, racism for you?
Various workplaces, there are different characters.
Hmm.
So I can think of different scenarios. The most recent one, which was a few years ago, being I was the only black woman in the office. Um, and okay, I'll give you one example. So one day I was sitting there and doing my work, in my zone, and a coworker comes up to me and says, "We were wondering if your hair is real." So at the time, I had locks down to here, about your length, and so I said, "Yes, they are," and I said, "Yes, they are," and as you can see from in the root, right? So, and I explained that it was time. I was due for retightening because I had sister locks at the time, right? So I showed her. I said, you could probably see like it's a little fuzzy in here and stuff. And I wasn't. I was really genuine. And I said, yeah, you're gonna see probably next week because I'm getting them done on the weekend, and it's going to be tighter in here. So I had to explain how it works.
Mm-hmm,
But I said, no,
mm-hmm.
but my hair's real.
So,
And it's totally calm because I knew it was coming because I could kind of tell
yeah,
that,
yeah.
oh, here we go, right? So I said, yeah, no, my hair's real, blah, blah, blah.
Some questions are great because it's, we were saying this, it's a teaching moment. Whether I go to an Indigenous sister or brother and I say, could you please help me with this? Because we have Sandy Boucher is going to be back on again. She's been on twice, just enlightening us, giving us some training, learning
Mm.
as to how we, what's a safe space for an Indigenous person, what questions can we ask, and she just makes it that Indigenous, non-Indigenous peoples can have that opportunity. And some things are a teaching moment for sure, right? Because I had a similar thing. I was on the bus, I was telling you one day, and somebody said, a little girl, she was with somebody else. I think it was a little girl. She came beside me. She says, is it true that you guys only wash your hair once a month? And there's just story after story like that. And I remember, I think I joked with you and I said, no, I should have said to her, no, no,
Yeah,
no. We
sometimes
wash
you
it
think
once
of
a
these,
year.
yeah,
We wash it once a year on Christmas. That's when we want
you
to.
think of these moments after.
Well, yeah, and I recognize, and so
Mhm.
again, audience, when we're here, think of people like the founding fathers. I won't name any names; they're gone now. But anyhow, when they teach, this comes through the time warp where people actually they thought we were orangutans, right? We were one step above primates. We're classified at the bottom of the rung in terms of race classification, right? The darker the skin, the more dehumanized, and people are really they had us in human zoos. William McGee started this. So now here we are, and people are thinking certain things, and it's not your fault. But together we can do something about it. We can actually get some of our, you know, we can
Exactly.
deconstruct some mindsets.
Yeah, and now there's actually, like you said, now there's names for certain things. Like we know, okay, some so and so like classified, what these emotions and feelings are. So I'm actually, I'll give you another story. When you mentioned orangutan, you reminded me of my stepfather, who's now passed.
Mm,
Um, had told me the story, and I was probably maybe about 10 or 12 or something, and he was telling the story about how when my family's Guyanese from Guyana, South America. So
okay.
he had left Guyana and he was in England studying. He was a welder, so he was studying. And he said, yeah, someday somebody, I don't know if it was at school or on the way like to school or something, but he said, yeah, this British guy had asked him, well, you're from Guyana. Like, how did you get your breakfast in the morning? Like, how did you, like, what were you eating and stuff like that? So my stepfather just, calmly says, well, I wake up in the morning and then like I, see a branch and then I swing from, this tree to that tree to get my bananas and stuff. So he's just like,
Sorry, we're not
yeah,
laughing at people. We're just saying this is what we go
humor
through.
humoring the guy. So this would have been in the maybe in 50s. This would have been in England, in London,
Right,
England,
right.
and in Guyana at that time was still a British colony, so it would have been called British Guyana. So in their mind, a lot of people and a lot of people of European descent only saw at that time television was still relatively new, right? And so they saw these shows, and any black people that they saw in the show were mostly like primates. Like they had the stereotypes going on, or like the maid, like
Yes,
Hattie
yes.
McDaniel, playing the servants and stuff like that. So they had these images in their head, like
Yeah,
what
yeah.
did you guys do? So when my another story, like when my aunt, she was the first person in my family to come to Canada in 1956. So she came to Ottawa in
Mm,
1956, and she would tell me stories about, yeah, I'd be on the bus and people would come up to me and like, oh my God, like why are you so dark? And like, what's going on with your skin and blah, 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 blah. And she tells them, this is what my aunt said. This is what she would tell them. She's like, well, because I'm from a hot climate and, the sun has us this way. So my aunt's still, trying to like maybe, appease them or something. She wouldn't say, oh, I was born like this. She actually said, and I remember that she said, oh, because we're from a hot climate, so our skin is very dark.
Mm.
Wow.
It's almost a little
Wow.
apologetic, just a touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Accommodating. It's like an accommodation. Like, oh, you don't have to fear me. This is it's just because I'm from this hot climate. Or they would ask to touch your hair, and oh yeah, our hair is this way because we're in the sun. So it's like, well, at least that's kind of true, right? But the skin thing, instead of saying like, oh, we were born this way.
She's a different nation. She's a different group. We're from
Oh
Africa.
my
I'm beyond,
God.
right? I even,
Yeah.
I think sometimes little things that people don't, other groups, dominant groups, shall we say, don't acknowledge. Like there's things you can't acknowledge. Like somebody said to me one time, I remember this was the big thing because my mom and my dad, and I love them to bits. So my mom, like, you're not going to get a job. I mean, I started my life, you're not going to get a job.
Oh wow.
These things here, that's going to stop you from getting a job. And that's their reality. Because I mean, let's say we've come off the ships, off the boat, and via Barbados for me, via Guyana for
Yeah,
your
that's the thing. We
you're
only go
Canadian, right?
one ship landed in one place and
Yeah,
another ship
yeah.
went somewhere else. That's the only
And
difference.
here we were taught to assimilate. Your name is not Kunta Kinte, it's Toby. So there's this whole assimilation process. So we have things like our hair, and I was determined to have this hair. I didn't want to bun my head anymore. Bun your head, audience means the perm, potato lyre chemicals that get into the hair and actually go under further
And
than
can you
that.
imagine, like Madame C. Walker, like she had a whole business. Like she became the wealthiest black woman in
True.
America based on this product
Yeah.
that she created to, get rid of our the curl,
Girl, that's
which is
some
the
deep,
curl,
deep.
and the coil in our hair is actually some people call it the ether nine communication with
Mm.
the divine. So there's a whole concept about the hair coil,
And
which
that
is it probably used to
melanin
be
is
an
all up in there. Melanin is
yes,
all up in there.
carbon.
Yeah.
So it could be
Yes.
that could be a topic for another discussion
That is
also.
so true. That is so
Yeah.
true. That's
Yeah,
a
but
very
just when I
powerful.
was thinking about that one day, and I said, "Wow, I mean, this woman, it's like, okay, so she believed she was helping black women, right? Like, be more presentable, right? You want
Right.
to, press your hair and stuff to be, more, like you say, like more not threatening, right? So you coming
Absolutely.
in with your afro and your plaits and your
I
thing,
mean,
you know.
okay, Rox, I don't know what you guys did, but this was
Look
a
at some of my
really
Guyanese Creoles coming out. I start to my Guyanese Creole starts to come out when I talk about certain things.
I mean, I talk to people about ironing our hair. Okay, this is a big thing. You got your hair washed, then you got it together. Next thing you know, you're getting that hair, you're getting it ironed. I don't know. I'm older
Yeah,
than you. I'm like how many years older
I
than you,
didn't
but not
like
much.
it. I didn't
But
like it.
didn't you iron your hair
I
with
didn't
the
like
ironing
it. The
comb?
pressing, no, no,
Pressing your
my,
hair,
I didn't like
pressing
that.
or
I didn't
ironing
like
your
the hot
hair.
comb. The hot comb, no, I didn't like it. So I used to get my hair cornrowed once a week
Oh,
for
okay.
school. I was
Yeah.
yeah,
We
I
did
went
it
to
in
school.
Barbados and then we
Yeah,
came and we did it here. So you did the corn roll instead of
I did
the
the
pressing
cornrows,
or the
and I had
ironing.
ribbons. I had ribbons with my hair was always in braids. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and imagine how much of that destroyed the carbon of the melon. I don't know, but I'm just saying that we had to keep the hair straight. And of course, a lot of this is practical, putting on a weave or whatever. Yes, people want to do because it's a lot to
We
handle.
convince ourselves that it's
I
practical.
hear you. I'm just trying to be gentle with the
I
people. But
I'm
we
good with
do.
the being
We
gentle.
do.
I don't
With
have
all
time
due
for that.
respect. That?
Yeah.
Sorry?
Like I said, I don't have time to be gentle anymore.
I
I
hear you.
seriously,
I hear you.
no. It's like no.
I
It
hear you.
it has to do with trying to conform.
Yeah.
It's putting on the mask
Mm,
of acceptability, and you walk outside, and it's like, oh, okay, so you got your weave in, you got your whatever,
right.
and we feel like, oh, I fit in. I'm fine. I'm not, threatening. I don't look too black.
True.
I fit in. I
True.
look more like the dominant group. And that's what
Yes,
it's about. So people can be in denial all they want. They can
true.
try and convince themselves all they want, but that's what it's about. That's what
Definitely.
it's about.
Definitely. That has a lot to do with, and that's, and again, about fault. So sometimes when I do these
And it's
trainings,
not their fault. See,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
almost like an
yeah,
oxymoron. It's not their fault because
absolutely.
they have that belief about themselves. So this
Yes.
is what's considered normal. It's normal to, to wear your hair relaxed or wear weave or, perm pressed, buffed and polished, whatever. Because that's, like you said, you present, you're nice. Oh, she's a nice, nice black woman or whatever. Actually, another story. I was at this conference, and I met this black lady, and somebody said something and it triggered something, and she said, "Oh yeah, back in the '70s, she saw somebody. I think it was like a picture or something. They were at this conference, so it was this lady telling me, and somebody had an afro, and she said, "Oh, I love that," or something. And I said, "Oh, I wish I could wear my hair like that." And her white coworker said, "Why would you want to do that? Like, where you wouldn't be like something like basically it wasn't acceptable." So she knew
Mm,
from her coworker, and this was in the '70s, that even if she had wanted to wear her hair like that,
that it wasn't
it
okay.
wouldn't, it wasn't okay. And even myself, like in high school, so this would have been in the mid '80s. Remember when Tracy Chapman came out with her song and she had her little twists and stuff? I'm like,
I
oh, I
know.
love that. And
Yay,
I had
Tracy.
wanted to do that. I had wanted to wear my hair locks, but I knew for myself, where was I? Same thing with work. Like I knew, oh my God, like how is it going to work? Like, how
Right.
is it going to work? Me in
Yeah.
Ottawa, right? In Ottawa, where I was
Mm-mm.
already a raisin in the milk. And
Mm-mm.
so, me going to an environment at the time I was in school. I was doing my undergrad, and I had various part-time jobs. One of them was at the Ottawa Congress Center, and at the time I had extensions in, like the curly braid extensions. And I remember one time I got to work, and no word of a lie that my supervisor, who was head of the beverage department, said, "Go brush your hair." And I'm like,
Okay.
"Excuse me? Go brush
Oh.
your hair." And he was like, "Look, this is an East Indian man, right? So
Uh-huh.
another
Uh-huh.
person of color telling me, go brush your hair." My hair was already, my hair was fine.
Yeah.
And I turned to a coworker, a white guy, and I'm like, what is he talking about? And I'm like, my hair is fine. So I was like sort of kind of traumatized. I'm like, what are you talking about? Go brush my hair. So I went to the change room and stuff. I'm looking at my hair and I'm like fixing it. I'm like, what's wrong with my hair? So I don't know what he was on that day. Something happened. Like maybe he didn't have
Well,
his
I
fix or
mean,
something.
when you
But
think about
something
it, mhm,
in his mind, my hair looked unkept. So he was like, go
yes,
brush it. Wow.
when I think about it, I have somebody that
Hmm.
interviewed me. She's a wonderful lady from South India, and they were colonized to, like she has said to me, to believe that we are better than you. At least you're not them. You're up here a little bit. They're kind of in the sewer. You're in the basement. So thank you.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, especially because of the nappy hair. So when we talk about these things, I think sometimes you we people don't understand, and this is why we do this show too. That we as a people, you grew up on some level. We were sleeping. Now a lot of us are woken up fully, right? Roxanne, you were always a little bit woke up, but still, right? We had some stuff to deal with, but
Yeah.
we literally walk around thinking, "What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me?" Like this internal oppressed self, because we're trying to fit in. We're doing our best. Now talk
Listen,
about fitting in school. That's the next thing I
for
need you to
me,
talk.
I was Canadian first
Yeah.
because my significant other had actually asked me that. Like, did you see yourself black first? I'm like, no, I was Canadian first. I don't like a Canadian kid, and Pierre Trudeau has a lot to do with that. So
But
I
yet
was
you're not
Canadian
Canadian
first.
first. Let's remember that.
Listen, in my head, I listen. Like you said, I was Canadian first, and I'm sure for you, you were probably Canadian first too. We weren't because think about it, we were always the one little brown face in the crowd. So in my mind, I was like everybody else, but if I like somebody, see, and I always had my little crushes. It was almost like a hobby. I had a
Yeah, and what? Did they have
crush
blonde
on some
hair?
guy,
Come on, tell me,
crush
was it
on
blonde
some
hair?
guy. There were
Blonde hair?
no other black kids. I was
No.
always, at one point in my elementary school, I was the only black kid in the school up until grade 5, and then another girl came. She moved from Toronto with her family. So that was the first time I experienced being, there were two of us. But every other time, and then in middle school, then there was like a few more. But up until that point, I was always the only. So for me, no, I thought I was like everybody else. So if I like somebody, I thought like, oh, they're gonna like me back. But then, yeah, I experienced sometimes where they don't like me.
Disclaimer. It's there's nothing wrong, audience, with trying to fit in. Everybody wants their children to, but if you don't know who you are, now that's the problem. That's a
And it starts
real
at
problem.
home, like you said. It
Yeah,
starts at home. So even like with Maya too, like she knew from small who she was.
yeah.
This is where we're from, blah blah blah. And she did this project in school. It was pioneers. It was the pioneers, and I remember, she's the whenever it came home, the paper, like they send you a paper. This is what the kid needs to do, blah blah blah. And so I said, you know what, we're going to do the Black Pioneers of Canada.
You're gonna what? Do what?
We're going to do the Black Pioneers in Canada.
Okay.
So that's what
Really?
we did. Yes. And the teacher, I remember she said, "Oh, I didn't know." And I told Maya, I said she's going to say exactly that because who knows, right? Because it's not in the history books. And at the
Absolutely.
time when she was in school, there might have been maybe a page of Black history. When I
Right.
was in school, there was maybe a paragraph or two about Black people in Canada.
hmm
I'm
hmm
like, wow,
Yeah, that's interesting. That's really
wow.
interesting. When you think about trying to fit in, though, you were telling me some stories too. Like, what are the rules? There's trying to fit in rules, right? Because I thought everybody loved me, but deep down there was this thing that I knew. Like, I was hanging out with some Italian girls at one time, lovely ladies, treated me great, thought I was, wow, God, Sandra's wonderful. But then I'd hear certain things on the side where people are having parties, birthday parties, or whatever. I was
I
not
was not
invited.
invited.
I was not invited. I was dating for a little bit this Italian gentleman. He said, "Oh, are you kidding? I can't bring you to my house. I can only bring you here when my parents go away." You're filing these things, but you're internally, and we laugh about things today because now that it's appropriate for us to talk about this. Years ago, this would have been shut down. What we're talking about.
Exactly. Yep. It would have
Now
been stopped.
that dominance has said to us, "Oh, go ahead and talk about it." But here we are, and we're trying to fit in, and there's rules. And I remember there was this redhead young man that I had a crush on. This is all we were seeing, and there's that little folk song, and in it, and Dr. Francis Cresswell Singh also said this: "White is right, brown stick around, black get back." And I always think about that in terms of other people knew it, right? They came through the time warped, and there was two sets of people. If you're talking about black and white, indifferent, there's everything in the spectrum in between. But generally speaking, the darker the skin, they're like one step above primates. You don't want to be them, and you don't want to date one, especially at certain points. Now everything goes right, but back then. There's this guy, and I had a crush on him. And finding out the reason, a friend of mine said to me, "Oh, he doesn't like black people. He's not going to go to the prom with you because he doesn't like black people." And in my mind,
Wow.
you file it, right? And then we
You
internally
file it.
oppress
Yes.
ourselves.
You
Can you
file it
relate
in
to
that mental Rolodex, in that overstuffed mental Rolodex
that? Yeah,
of
yeah.
emotions and all this baggage.
What? So did you like people? Did you follow the rules? we.
Well, who knew they were rules? Like they were unspoken, like you said, unspoken rules. But to me, like I said, going about my little daily school life business, um, I didn't know. I didn't know, but I knew something didn't feel right. I'll give you another example. So my
Mm,
earliest memory it happened when I was 5 years old. I was on the school bus, and there's like a bar. I actually wrote about this on my blog, on my Medium blog.
Ah, okay.
So there's this bar. Um, is like the first row behind the driver's seat. And so kids could fit under the bar, and there's like this box beside the driver's seat. So kids would go and, like, you know, we're small bums, and they you go and you sit on this box because, oh, it was a cool thing to do. You're beside the driver, blah blah blah, right? So I saw my opportunity come, went under the bar, sat beside the driver. Driver didn't even acknowledge me. Like, I didn't know hello, nothing. But I started to get this.
Wow.
This was going on.
In
And I
that
had to
little
put it
spot
in
of
that
the
little
bus.
spot. So imagine me, little 5-year-old me,
Oh my gosh.
getting elbowed,
And
and I had to
bony.
get up.
You're bony too.
I had to get up and go
No
back to my
way.
seat. So I was in the first row. So that's how, you know, I was able to get
Yeah.
my turn came, right? But yeah, I had to get. So I wrote about this recently, um, and I'm like, wow. So can you imagine this? The
I read that
grown
piece.
adult.
I
Yes. This,
one sec. People, you have to reach out to her. We're going to leave, I'll put all the information on media.com. She's an excellent writer. And that piece was really well done and it was riveting. Continue. Sorry.
So yeah, like, so you said, I wrote about this recently, and, you know, just in retrospect, thinking back, I'm like, oh my God, that was an adult man doing that to a little child, abusing a child
Yeah. When you really think
because of
about
the
it.
color of my skin, because I was the only little black kid on that
Have
bus.
mercy. Have mercy. Yeah.
And you know, for the longest time, I didn't even say anything when I got home. I didn't tell anybody about it. But I, you know, had turned to my seatmate and said, you know, the bus driver was hitting me. And it's, you know, it's like, to even when something like this happens to you, like, you just, especially as a kid, and like you said, you file things. And that one, I guess I put that in a special place. I don't know what
No,
place
you
I put
do.
it.
You do.
But, you know, things like this happen.
You do.
Different things happen. Like, I mean, I could be on here for a while telling you about different, you know, incidents.
Yes. Yes.
But you,
Absolutely.
it really, like, it chips away at you, like a little chip, 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 chip. And you're like, but no, I just have to keep going. You just have to keep going. So, you know, so getting back to what you said about the rules. So if there was a rule that, oh, certain kids, the little white kids, can do something, but you can't, I think I probably got that rule that day.
That
Because
you're not
later
sort
on,
of allowed to like
do
somebody that's
certain
white or
things. No,
okay.
not the liking. That
Okay.
I didn't get that rule. I didn't get the memo for that, because even in
Yeah.
high school, I
I
didn't get
got
the
the
memo for that.
memo.
I
Okay.
didn't get the I didn't get that one. But I got that one about doing certain things. Yeah, certain things I'm not going to even attempt because it's not going to work. So I got that, if you want to call it this invisible memo. I got that one that day. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a hockey memo too. I remember my brother wanted, and he was so good at it. But it wasn't something that was invited when we were in school. He was so good at playing hockey, ice hockey, but it wasn't the thing for black boys to be doing, right? So a lot of them, there's that implicit
Listen,
entrenched, that
when
kind
it
of,
comes to that, I got to tell you this little, you know, it's funny how one thing you say segues into something.
oh, that's what the show
So
does.
my goddaughter is brilliant. She got her hockey scholarship, and she's a black girl, black lady, and she just finished her undergrad. She was down in the States attending a university, and she's now going to be pursuing her post grad work. So not post grad, graduate work. Sorry, graduate work in Canada. So she's going to be playing for a Canadian hockey team at the school.
Wow.
So sometime in the past, her family was at a game, and her mother heard. So her mother's married to my cousin. So she's, you know, family. She's at this game and hears this prominent hockey person, right, say, this is one sport that they are not going to take over.
Wow. I'm telling you, I was looking up a lot of this, racism in sports is huge. It's so huge.
So this is out of a prominent, I'm not going to say who the person was, but this is
Yeah.
out of a prominent person in the hockey world say that.
Mm, 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 mm.
And he knew my cousin, was in within earshot, right? And they do
Wow.
shit like this. Excuse my French. They do stuff like this. They do this passive aggressive.
Roxanne, she just let herself go. Give her a
I
minute.
tried
Calm
to
it
put it down there, but yeah, they do certain things. People in the dominant group who are in certain positions, they do passive aggressive behavior like this. They will do things knowing that you within earshot and you can hear and you see them and you know what they're it's like, oh wow. And this we're in the what century are we in now, Sandra? When you go through the time warp and then what? And
Girl,
they're still doing it. Like
hey,
wow.
when you hear people say, like, because of the way I presented myself, and I would talk. Now, when I get with my Bayesian family, I just talk like this, hey. But when I am just, right, naturally, I don't talk like that. This is why when people book me and I show up with these, they kind of go, and you could see the faces. And sometimes that hits hard because you're like,
Yeah.
this is the 21st century for real. This is the 21st century, right? I read an article on medium.com. We're going to leave some information. Both of us are on Medium. I'd love for you to read her work, read mine while you're at it, and follow us. So I read an article, and there's this woman a white woman that I'd love to have on the show. I hope so. That she was just outing it all what she went through in the States, and because she was dating a black gentleman. And so I love to hear these stories because when you have an invested interest, when you're looking through certain eyes and you can observe it and you can hear it. When you have, say, you're a white a woman married to a black man, white man married to a black woman, and a lot of these stories are on this writing platform that we're on, and you kind of go, wow, because I'm there for double consciousness, of course, and that's what I'm writing about mostly. Um, and people are a white mother that has a lovely, beautiful brown black boy that she's raising has an invested interest, and you can then see it. And this so-called allies, I know there's a controversy about there's no such thing as allies, but in terms of that mother aligning with this work, the opportunity is greater than when someone doesn't have an invested interest. They can really see what's going on. Amazing, amazing, amazing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we talked about something. There was a challenge I remember years ago in terms of the ballet. And my
Yes.
Miss Maya, my goddaughter, Mrs. Roxanne's baby. So how did you handle it? It had everything to do with. I talk about the tights. You go, girl.
Yeah, actually, I wrote about that as well. There's another post about her telling me um, the day, I was combing her hair and she wasn't feeling. Okay, that's I think another story. But there was a moment about somewhere she couldn't do the splits and she's really upset about that. And she says, "Oh, I'm the only little, darkest one in my class and stuff." And so obviously there's so much reassurance. Like you deserve to be there. You don't feel away or
When did
something.
she start? This is Roxanne's daughter we're talking about. When did she
Yeah,
start
she's
dancing?
now 25 years old. So this at the time, so she had started. There's a creative dance program, which is part of the associates program at the National Ballet School of Canada. So she had started when she was about 6 years old,
Wow. And now
and she
she's
was
a
always
beautiful dancer.
like me, right? I was
Wow.
always the only little one, and so was she. But there were more children, but a lot of those little children of color were either of Orientalism, like Chinese descent, Asian descent, or they were mixed. They were biracial kids, so they weren't as dark, right?
Okay.
They weren't
And
as
that's the
melanin.
problem. You don't want to be that
Right,
dark. Yeah.
right. So that was an issue, and Maya felt it. Like she felt,
Beautiful melanated girl and a beautiful dancer. So
right.
yeah.
Yeah. But the thing what you were saying about the tights. So one day I was at they used to have these open houses, and of course the person giving the tour was saying about, oh, and when you're on stage and the lighting hits the dancer's legs, so the pink tights gives the appearance of skin tone, right? And of course she's talking about the lovely ladies of European descent or even like Latin American women, because there were some Latin American dancers and also dancers of Asian descent who, of course, from a distance with the pink tights would appear, to have that flesh color skin. But then you get the darker women, and you're not going to see that seamlessness, right? And I knew that's what she was talking about. I'm like,
Wow.
are you
Wow.
really? Yeah, they are. But now, like even Misty Copeland, who is prima ballerina with, I believe it's New York City Ballet. So even her, right, her skin tone is still fair enough, even though she's a black woman. She's mixed, right, because she's biracial. But even her would be able to pull off that, um, not as dark.
Interesting.
It's really it's still.
So now the tights that are in now, are they actually tights for darker women for in
Yes,
ballet?
they
dance?
do have cocoa colored tights.
I'm fascinated.
And it's amazing because
I've been unheard of.
it's great. So I got some for Maya, for my daughter, and she was able to do her because she's just finishing up a contemporary dance program in Berlin, and she was able to do her final exams
Wow.
in her tights, and she felt so
Bravo.
good. She
I
felt so
know.
good.
People probably think we're tripping. We're so happy over tights. This is wow. This is
Amazing.
one of those wow moments.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that something? It's like, oh, we've come this way, come so long, this far, that now we can wear our own skin color tights. Yeah.
Wow.
Amazing.
When I'm thinking of when I think of esteem issues, like when I do these cultural sensitivity trainings through an anti-bias, anti-oppression lens, it's hard. And because the first thing that people end up feeling like, oh, like that woman that came on, I had a call with and said, I have no biases. I was offended. How could you say that? There is still that reality that people, I think that most of us feel we just showed up here in the 21st century. No, we have a lot of entrenched, multi-generational, intergenerational stuff. And why it's amazing,
Trauma. You
right?
mean
And it's amazing
trauma?
to look at some of it because some of it is trauma, but some of it is part of heritage and ownership of self. So we
Right.
close the disconnect, which is a beautiful thing.
If it's a cultural association that's there in your DNA, that's a different thing. But then there's also the trauma from
Definitely. That's what double
from
consciousness
all of
means.
the
Yeah.
abuse, from all
Yes.
of the abuse that is also there. And I didn't know what that was. Even like going back as a child, going to visit relatives in the States, in New York specifically, right? And seeing certain behaviors and not really understanding why are they acting like that? Like, why is it, what is it? And now I know what that energy is. Now I know it's mental illness.
Hmm.
And seeing that, especially in the Black community, and people, sort of like, shrugging it off as like, oh, they're just drunk or whatever. These person are drunk, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
It's a certain behavior, a certain way of being because there's a hopelessness because of the oppression. Because this trauma, and Joy DeGruy talks about this, Dr.
Dr.
DeGruy.
Joy DeGruy. That's why
She
I'm doing
talks
what I'm
about
doing
this.
today. Is Joy
Yeah,
DeGruy.
she talks
Yeah.
about this post-traumatic.
Slave syndrome. Yeah.
Yes. And we all have it or have had it in some varying degrees.
Oh my goodness. And I always think we're not relentless because we're just kicked around. We are relentless because of all the stuff that's happened consistently again and again over the years and we still get up. These people are amazing people. And they're still out here, degree to the nines, doing fantastic things, inventing all sorts of things in politics, and we're still going. And there's a purpose for us, and there's purpose for everybody watching this podcast. There really is. And again, it isn't your fault, but you can do something about it. And Roxanne, I submit, because we're coming to the close again here, that knowledge, when you know the truth, there's a scripture that says, you know the truth, it'll make you free. Like when you understand stuff, even in our trainings, we go back into the time warp and back again. Then we go back again because we want to look. We can't
Right.
correct something if we don't know
You
what
have to
we're supposed
know
to correct.
exactly. You have to
Do
know
that for me.
history, and the history didn't begin with the enslavement of the African people.
That's
That's
right.
that's just a piece
That's a
of the
small part
history.
of it.
That's a
Absolutely.
piece of the history. And granted that that piece lasted for several hundred years, but there's a reason why things today are still happening, especially in the United States. There's a reason why the behavior in policing, why there's this abuse still happening,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
even in in business, in systemic racism. There's a reason, and I tell everybody, I said you should read. This book was banned at one point, and in some states it's still banned. And I read it a couple years ago,
What's it
and I
called?
actually Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Oh wow, yeah.
It's one
That's
of those
supposed to be
books
the best.
that it's a classic, right?
Yeah.
And I had it for years. My cousin had it, and she left it with me, so I inherited the book. And I tried to read it when I was 5. It's another story, but I tried to read it at 5. Anyway. But I read it recently as an adult who understands all this stuff, and so I take that book as the Bible, the foundation of the United States of America. I'm like, oh, I get it now. I get why things are the way they are. I'm like, oh, this book explains everything. So once you get it, like once you understand the root cause of an issue, you get it, and then nothing surprises you.
And our history, everybody, is not without reach. It's not this mystery. It's out here. It's so much of it has always been out here. We've had so many people that you may not have heard of: Naeem Akbar, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. There's so many people out here that have been bringing this work. Besides Dr. Martin Luther King, and of course the obvious Malcolm Little, aka Malcolm X. This work, this our history has been available.
Exactly.
It's not just been pushed. It's not been put to the front lines as everything else, right? But it's here. It's here. So we don't want people feeling guilty right now. It's not actually, Roxanne, this has really just been around, I think, the late 90s that all of people can come online and talk like this without YouTube shutting them
Exactly.
down.
Without the certain letters of the alphabet
Yeah. Oh my
trying
goodness.
to shut you down. Like there's a
Absolutely.
song that I believe it was Billie Holiday, the Strange Fruit song.
Yeah.
She was warned not to sing that song
Yes, she was. Yes.
several
That's an
times.
amazing,
And
amazing.
there's a film about it, so
Yeah.
people can see it, a biopic. People can see it. This is real. Like people, they didn't want people, and when I talk about people, I mean African Americans. They didn't want, and when I mean they, I'm talking about who they is. They didn't want people to be enlightened. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, if they know too much, they might cause a revolution or a rebellion or something. Well, you know what? You cannot stop divine retribution.
Well, we're coming to the end, but
Yes.
I wanted to leave something with people. There's that wonderful film. I showed it in one of the trainings. It's riveting. It's called Whitewashed. And there's another one called, oh, who is the gentleman? Canadian. The Skin We're In. Oh, oh, Cole.
Desmond Cole. Desmond Cole?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, The Skin We Are In.
The
So,
journalist Desmond Cole, yeah.
yes, that would be him. I think it's important to watch. So I would love to leave you sometimes with some content and we'll put some information. Roxanne, what do you want people to know? Medium.com is big. You're going to reach out to her there and I'll leave you her information so that we
Yeah,
can,
my blog is called Raw, so raw like raw vegetables,
like raw
um,
vegetables.
in caps.
Mhm.
And also that I'm going to be releasing a book. It's called the A to Z Quick Reference Guide for Basketball Spectators, for all those basketball fans out there. And
Ooh.
that happened organically, and I explain in the book how it came to be, how it came into being.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love doing this with you because we're looking for people, everyday people that just can let people know, be aware that there's nothing wrong with you. If you're feeling internally oppressed, you're feeling guilt, you're feeling like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just fit in? Well, maybe you're not supposed to fit in like that. We want to get
I
along. We
want
want to
to
love each
remind
other.
people
Uh-huh.
that the system was not created for people of color, especially people of African descent. It
Yes,
was not created. See, that's the thing.
absolutely.
When you have that understanding, you get it. It wasn't created for us.
Yes, absolutely. And the assimilation goes deep. I remember years ago, the worst thing you could say to us would be go back to Africa. It was like, and it was like the biggest insult. And when you think about it, that's messed up. Because
That is
somebody should
messed
say to
up.
us, go back to Africa, and we say, I want to go back
You know what I
now. I know
mean?
it was like, go back to Africa. Oh my God, I
It's
didn't
like,
say
no, we didn't want any association with anything like that.
that. No.
What?
Oh, please
Yeah.
celebrate with us. We laughing and stuff, but we just so grateful. We connecting with ourselves,
That
our
we
people,
are
those in that disconnect.
awake now. We
Yes,
can
final.
celebrate being awake.
What do you got
Wow.
final words to say to our people and everybody?
Um, that, is mostly it. It's just, I think, not being afraid to, really delve into the history. And if somebody sees, or hears something wrong, and they'll know, because you'll know it in your gut,
Yeah,
just say something,
yeah,
like just speak up. Because if you don't, right, you just stay quiet, it kind of means like you're just
complicit
letting it
maybe. Yeah,
continue.
yeah. Thank you,
So
honey.
I think fear plays a huge part in this.
Okay. All right, we've got a you heard her. You heard it from Voices of Humanity. We will be right back. I just got a little commercial for you. Hi there, I'm Sandra McKechnie from Double Consciousness. Double Consciousness looks like this: cultural sensitivity, cultural awareness trainings. I've been doing it for 4 years. We're going into our 5th year, our 41st time on Zoom, and we're doing it. Would love you to join us. The next thing that I do is I'm a certified life coach holding space for clients in the areas of cultural awareness and sensitivity, right? So people that may have a challenge and they just want some space, a consultation, coaching opportunity to unpack implicit racial bias. Everybody's welcome, and we would love to have you in the trainings or book a consultation. And we have a free opportunity, 15 minutes, if you want to have a chat and get to know me and find out where you fit in that. The next thing that I do is I am a host for Voices of Humanity out of prconnectionsradio.com. If you want to be on my podcast and you're a fit, because it does have to fit with the show, has to complement the show and the network, I would love you to get in touch with me. And I'm also, from my heart, and I've always been a singer-songwriter, and I love this stuff. I love the singing. We put it in our trainings, our cultural sensitivity and awareness trainings. So sometimes I just sing just like this. You're all that I want. You are all that I need. And you brought me here when I can't find my way. You're all that I need. And you brought me here to pray. You should hear that with my keyboard player. It's to live for. Thank you so much for your time. I hope that helps you to know who Sandra McKechnie is. Take care. Bye for now. Laura, she's so whitewashed, eh? I'm messing with you. So I'm sorry. I'm just keeping it real. See, when you understand us, then you can get the little jokes. And how things are going down and why we're the way we are. But we are woke and we're pressing toward the mark for the prize. Thank God for his goodness. So have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, everybody. Roxanne, this is my
Thanks
sister
for having
girl.
me on the
I
show.
love her. She's an amazing writer. Medium.com, and I'm going to put all the information there for you so you can get in touch with her. Okay. Have a great weekend. Subscribe, please subscribe. The content's great. We've got amazing people. I have a Korean gentleman coming on next week. I believe it's next week. And he's talking about what happened to him. He was adopted by a white family, and what racism bias I did for him and how he managed. I'll tell you, it's a wonderful story. So join us for that. Okay, I look forward to having you again. Roxanne, much love. Have a
Thank
wonderful
you,
weekend.
Sandra.
Bye for now. Bye.